One of the things that many genealogists forget is that adult males living in the early 1800s might have served in the War of 1812. I always look for that service, especially now because it's easy. But even if a researcher remembers to look, they might not go far enough. They look and compile military service record indexes, and that's where they stop, especially if they don't find something. If you're not finding someone in compiled military service records in the War of 1812, you might need to keep watching. So one of the issues that you have to deal with is there are various types of soldiers. There are people that are in the militia, there are people that are in state forces, and there are people in the regular army. And it's those people in the regular army that people forget the most. It's also possible for somebody to be in all three at some point in time during the course of the war. They may start out in the militia, they may end up in a state regiment, and they may go from a state regiment into the regular army. So you really need to look in all three places. Usually we think about people as being soldiers, sailors, or Marines. And during the War of 1812, there were soldiers, sailors, and Marines. And I'm not going to be talking about sailors or Marines today, but you might need to look there also. But what I'm going to be talking about is the soldiers. There are basically three kinds of soldiers. There are militia. They might be local county level militia. And if they leave the county, they may join a state regiment. So there are state militias, state troops. And then there is the regular army. And it's the regular army that most people forget. So you might look in the compiled military service records and you may find militia. You might not, because the federal government didn't have the militia records to create the compiled military service records from. Or you may have the state regiments. And most of the state regiments are, in fact, in the records of the National Archives, but you may need to go to a state archives to find them. But the one place that most people forget to look is the Register of Enlistments. Now, for the longest time, nobody looked in the Register of Enlistments because it was on microfilm and difficult to use and hard to use, and only the die-hard people would go to the Register of Enlistments. The Register of Enlistments can be found on Ancestry, it can be found on Fold3, it can be found on Family Search, so it's very easy to get to. And because it's digitized now, there's no excuse for not looking at it. So the Register of Enlistments details those individuals who are enlisted in the regular army. Those individuals do not have compiled military service records. Now, you may find a compiled military service record for them for their service in the militia or in the state regiments. You won't find a compiled military service record for their active duty service in the regular army. So the kinds of information that you'll get in a Register of Enlistments is name, the unit, a description of what they look like, who enlisted them, where they enlisted at, where they were born, and then a remarks section. All kinds of good stuff. The information in the Register of Enlistments generally comes from muster rolls and enlistment records and payrolls and those kind of things. They will help you to locate muster rolls. You'll see in the descriptions the initials MR or the initials PR, those kind of things. That means muster roll and payroll. For regular Army people, also, there are things called company books and descriptive books. These are located in Record Group 98 in the National Archives. And these are records that deal with the regular Army up until 1820, when the organization of the regular Army changed. These contain the same kinds of information that are found in the Register of Enlistments, because this is another source where that information comes from. The descriptive book allows you to do is to look at the entire company. And I do that often. When I've been working on War of 1812 Dead, I've gone to what I think is almost all the available descriptive books and gone through them and pulled out the information on who died in the unit. I want to remind you that you want to continue to look. Your exhaustive search includes not only militia records, not only state regimental records, and the regular Army records, and that it's possible for somebody to be in all three during the war. Those records can be found in a variety of different places. They may be found at the county level in books about the county. They may be found in the state level and in the archives, or they may be found in the National Archives military records themselves, which means they might be on Ancestry, Fold3, or Family Search. There are basically three places you need to look for lists of soldiers in the War of 1812. The first place I'm going to start is the county level. There may be books published about War of 1812 service at the county level. I can think of Madison County, New York, as an example. There are not very many of these, but they do exist. Then you want to look at the state level. And there are state adjutant general records that have been published for places like New Jersey, Kentucky, that will be very helpful to you. There have been books published by the Society of the War of 1812, the Daughters of the War of 1812, that deal with state level records. So you want to look to locate those. You will find Ohio has both a book about from the Adjutant General and also a book from the State Society of the Daughters of the War of 1812, although it's somewhat difficult to locate. You may also find, for example, in Virginia, the muster rolls have been put in the records of the Land Office. So there's a 2-volume set published on the Virginia Land Office that provides facsimiles of the muster rolls for Virginia troops. Now, one of the problems with those is that they don't include the Virginia troops that were federalized. So, for example, Loudoun County, Virginia, their records are located in the National Archives, and they are not in the Virginia Land Office records. There also are records for the 5th and 6th Virginia Regiment located in the Thomas Balch Library, payrolls that were found in somebody's attic in Purcellville many, many, many years ago. In NARA, you're going to want to look at compiled military service records. Now, those are not generally available on places like Fold3 or Ancestry or Family Search. You'll have to go to NARA to go and find those, the National Archives. The company books that I talked about are in Record Group 98, Records of Army Commands. Now, Heritage Books, who sponsors these videos, has over 298 titles that deal with the War of 1812 to some extent. Now, there are probably only about 100 titles that deal with the War of 1812 specifically. And some are just more specific to the war than others. There is, for example, for Virginia, Stuart Butler has gone through the Register of Enlistments and pulled out all the information on Virginia regulars in the War of 1812. Books by Eric Johnson, Tennessee Soldiers in the War of 1812, where he's gone through and pulled out all the records dealing with those. There are books on Maryland. There are books on African Americans who served as regulars in the Army. But still, my number one go-to resource for the final thing I do is to go to the Register of Enlistments and make sure that my individual is not found there. If I'm not able to find him anywhere else, and even if I am able to find him somewhere else, because I want to be able to be sure that I have all three possibilities taken care of before I decide he either served or he didn't serve. There were about 48 regiments in the regular army during the War of 1812. So that's a lot of people. So you want to be sure that you look there and recognize that one of the reasons we're doing this is that we're much more than just hatch, match, and dispatch people. Am I right? We're about connecting the lives and experiences of those who came before us, and that means uncovering those forgotten stories of War of 1812 soldiers in your family tree. Recognize that there are those regular soldiers also, those that belong to the regular army, that they may have been in the militia first, they may have been in a state regiment first. So recognize that you have to look at all three things. There are also some other YouTube videos that I've done before that you may find of interest that deal with War of 1812 pensions and what happens when you can't find that pension. And I also talk about how to research a soldier in the case of Captain Zaquil Morgan, who was in the 12th U.S. Infantry. And I'll put those in the links down below. I'll also include in the links down below some of the books that I've talked about, although to list all 298 of them would be ridiculous. So I will put some of the better possibilities out there. But if you were to go to heritagebooks.com and just type into the search field the words War of 1812, something will show up. I promise you, 298 somethings. You can be a little bit more specific in your search to sort of hone in on where you're going. So this has been Craig. This has been Just Genealogy, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Please tell your friends. Please subscribe. I haven't asked you to subscribe in a while. Don't forget that there are 3 kinds of soldiers in the war, and it's possible for him to be all 3. Don't just look in compiled military service records. Always, 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 for anyone living in the early 1800s, check the Register of Enlistments. Thank you all so much. I will talk to you again soon.